International Agunah Awareness Day, Timing and Gett Extortion, Practical Solutions. Ta'anit Esther is International Agunah Awareness Day. While Esther, trapped in a forced, undesirable, and abusive marriage, leveraged the situation to save us, her people, her suffering is often overlooked. Even entering to see her husband, the king, meant risking death. The risk to life is a big part of what made her actions so heroic. On this Ta'anit Esther, let's bring some of our attention and prayerful energy to the plight of Agunot, suffering much as Esther did, but without the fanfare. Far too often, they've been abused, sexually, violently, or verbally, and the husband's refusal to give a get is simply a further manifestation of vengeful abuse. Get abuse is not really about abusing the written instrument of the get, but rather abusing women by weaponizing it. There's a lot to say about the Agunah crisis from halachic, jurisprudential, and ethical perspectives. That our system of Jewish law, the one that's supposed to be adored the world over, leaves women vulnerable in such a systemic way, demands redress from within. For this reason, the earnest and bona fide efforts of the International Beth Din and other heroic courts like it to find authentic halachic solutions used by gedolim of the past, like Rav Moshe Feinstein, in the most heart-wrenching cases, are to be commended and supported. Also, and it needs to be said, sociological and institutional considerations should melt in the face of unthinkable human suffering and what are, on the merits, usually extremely compelling halachic arguments with compelling analysis and historical authority. The framing is twofold. Love of our neighbors, actualized in the alleviation of their catastrophic suffering. Ta'anit Esther will end, and you will eat at a known time that you can find on the calendar. For women who are chained to their husbands, though, the suffering is compounded by the fact that there's never an end in sight. Worse yet, there is zero agency, next to nothing women can do to empower themselves and improve their own situation because of the system itself. At its heart, abuse disempowers deeply. The best solutions we know empower at each step of the way. 2, demonstrating that our legal system, in the language of the Rambam, is not intended to bring vengeance into the world, but rather compassion, loving kindness, and peace. Rachamim, chesed, v'shalom ba'olam, into the world. Here, jurisprudential aims and rules of higher ordinal importance, like this one, should help tip the scales when bona fide halachic solutions are up for debate. Mainly, though, this is beyond the sphere of influence for most people in our community and others like it. We can support crucial initiatives, whether halachic or practical, like the halachic prenuptial agreement of the Beth Din of America, ORA, and the like, and we should. But what are other things we might do? Timing is everything. Get extortion. We've focused a lot as a community on halachic prenuptial agreements and even postnuptial agreements. I'm proud to say that the very first post-nup party, ours was a pizza party, happened at Congregation Beth Shalom in Providence, Rhode Island. The pizza delivery came late and Rabbi Clapper was the scholar in residence. Maybe you remember it. Attendance was less than desired, to be honest, but the precedent was set. Shortly thereafter, waves of postnuptial parties occurred in Orthodox synagogues in the US. Our synagogue board passed a board resolution requiring all marriages occurring in the synagogue or officiated at by its clergy to have a properly executed prenuptial agreement. We also passed resolutions that anyone who refused to grant their spouse a get would have their membership revoked. Hopefully, these initiatives create the kind of discouraging atmosphere that stops situations of igun before they arise and limits their overall occurrence. And yet there's one nagging misconception that cuts against the grain of these reforms. When people get divorced in our community, they regularly tell me, almost always, something to the effect of, look, I know the get can only be given once the civil divorce is complete, so we don't have to contact the Beth Din just yet, right? This misperception seems common among all genders. Sometimes there's an added layer where a man will say, now, I know that the Torah gave me the unilateral right to give a get as a protection against the feminist bias of civil judges. Sometimes it's religious, as in the fictitious yet representative quote above. Other times it's ideological. I will use the Gett to counteract the feminist bias of civil judges. Some, in either version, it's both wrong and toxic. Sometimes it's just about the opportunity. Why would I not use the Gett to extract a more favorable settlement? As a matter of fact, the Gett need not wait. True, responsible Beth Din, Jewish courts, will not publish evidence of a Gett prior to a civil decree of divorce. This is simply because they do not want to aid and abet polygamy under civil law. If a court were to release the Gett before the family court judge issued a civil divorce decree, someone might bring the patur, the document noting that a Gett was given, to a rabbi seeking to get remarried before the completion of a civil divorce. But there's nothing stopping a Beit Din from arranging the Gett to be given before the civil divorce is complete, and they do it all the time. It's not just that people don't have to wait. Religiously, they should not. In fact, in virtually all situations of igun, there's a mitzvah, not just an obligation, but a commandment to give the Gett and to do so expeditiously once the divorce is the clear end of the relationship. While the exact parameters are technical and the rationale debated, the command is the plain sense of the text in Devarim in the 24th chapter. Take, for example, Rashi's comment, mitzvah lav legarsha shelo timsachem be'einav. He's commanded to divorce her because she should not find favor in his eyes. Short of this, there's almost always been a formal legal ruling by a Beit Din that the man must issue the divorce and do so immediately. And the rabbis repeat, in a number of contexts, the dictum, mishum agunah akilu rabbanan, for the sake of the agunah, the rabbis ruled leniently. As Rabbeinu Tam implored, anyone who is stringent is nothing but a sinner. I didn't expound in this manner because of the agunah, but because it's the Torah's truth. If the Rabbeinu Tam calls folks who rule stringently regarding certain legal evidentiary issues sinners, all the more so people that seek to justify their own oppressive behavior. The unanimity and power of the Jewish religious ethos is so clear in this area that it's one of the few areas where there's little argument. No one says, no, we should not relax standards, even in the face of this suffering. No, we should keep to a stricter path when it comes to igun. And remember, this is halachic Judaism where everything is always debated. Lastly, I'd like to share a reflection based on personal observation. As a general rule, disputes regarding civil divorce settlements deepen conflict substantially. Placed in a zero-sum litigious battlefield where financial security, custody over children, and reputation are at stake, people naturally harden their positions. Lawyers are under ethical obligations of zealous advocacy and don't want to cave. This is all coming on top of conflict serious enough to sever the marriage in the first place. Systemic incentives predict deepening conflict and hardened hearts as the baseline. Add to this the anxiety felt so often by women who know how the system works that as soon as the divorce is on the table, they need the cooperation of the very partner they've chosen to cease cooperating with in order to secure their basic freedom. Almost every time I speak to a woman about divorce, they're afraid of becoming an agunah. For these reasons, we should insist as a community on a clear universal norm that prioritizes the giving of gittin as soon as the marriage is definitively over, with no exceptions. We should further educate the public that neither halakha nor civil law requires otherwise, as many or maybe most mistakenly believe. As Rabbi Reuven Bolka notes, a couple who is divorcing should not delay obtaining a get. They may understandably give more attention to the civil side and the settling of financial and custodial issues. However, they should take care of the get immediately, even before the civil procedure is finalized. Either of the couple who waits until just before remarrying to obtain a get risks dealing with a former spouse now possibly jealous of the other's newfound happiness and unwilling to contribute to it by being cooperative. This reframing, I believe, would help limit on the whole the number of situations where women find themselves trapped. Importantly, it would also alleviate the anxiety of divorcing women broadly while freeing everyone from system-wide incentives that only increase over time to act with malice. Situations that are truly problematic would also be more clearly identified from the outset, allowing for swifter activism and resolution. While this, the timing of Jewish divorce vis-a-vis parallel civil legal systems, is far from the most important or urgent aspect of this dark shadow. It's one that is the source of misperception, anxiety, and suffering. On this prayerful fast day, may our prayers and fast be as communal as Esther, who urged, Lech Kanos, go gather all the Jews in dramatic collective action. More importantly, may our cunning and strategies be as sophisticated as Esther's playing of Haman and Achashverosh alike. She brought lights of divine providence into the deepest Hester Panim on behalf of her people. Let us summon her courage.